Alright, we'll get started. So what we're looking at here is Introduction to Computers. I'm making this on Monday the 7th, but it's covering the previous 2 weeks. We already have a video on Monday of week 1, so this is Wednesday, Friday, and then Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the 7th. So I'll try to be brief so that you can see if you were gone or if you want to review what we talked about on those days. This is still back then in Unit 3, where we talked a lot about hardware. We talked about details of hardware. You got the processor, you have memory, electronic bus, you have some type of storage, we have a display, we can input and output all kinds of device input, we have speakers, we have a printer. All those things make up hardware. Alright? So, what communicates with the hardware? Some type of system software. Okay, system software. That can include like a file manager. That would be like a utility. Device drivers, you don't really see those, but they're really important. If you have a printer here, that's a Hewlett-Packard, and you're running it on a Asus computer, you should be able to have a device driver to make those communicate. And the most important thing, communicating with the hardware, is the operating system. The operating system makes the best use of all these resources. It manages information getting, going from memory and getting stored in storage. It manages how the display works. It takes care of input, sends information out to those, takes things from memory and gets them processed. That stuff travels along an electric bus. The operating system manages all the resources within the computer. And then, on the outside, we have an application that's designed to work with an operating system. Users know how to run an app or an application. Now, an application could be a browser. Okay, it could be a word processor, it could be some of the spreadsheets we're working with, and so forth. So what we strive to do is take somebody from being just a user and being more of an expert and being able to function anywhere within this entire picture. Minutes to get the first slide done. That's not good. I'll try to move a little faster. System software, and then we have application software. Okay, we already talked about applications. System software, two major areas: the operating system, the OS, and utilities. All these other things that communicate with the hardware. Makes all these things work. Then the applications communicate with the operating system. And then the users, like I said, all different levels of where they're able to work depending on their expertise. Performance. Performance can be here we're going to talk about, this is the performance we talked about. There is a survey, a performance survey that talks about how the student perceives, and then I'll look through it and see how I perceive how the student's doing. Learning, we talked about the importance of grit, drive, does it have autonomy, mastery, and purpose? Dan Pink. There is a whole list of companies that are for-purpose companies. We look at that list later on. Also, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi has a book called Good Business. He talks about flow, which relates back to these items up here. We're finishing up spreadsheets now, but this is when we got them started. Some key things: an if, a VLOOKUP. We finished Unit 3. Talk about details of hardware and software, and we did some group work. Group work was based on devices. So we said some people picked devices, some people worked on the iPhone, some Android, some Windows operating system in general, Linux operating system in general, Mac computers like a iMac and so forth. Some people, it didn't look like anybody did the Chromebooks or Chrome base. People did the iPad, a couple people did the Surface Pro, and some people did just tablets in general. So they could work in groups or individually, and they were to analyze the hardware and the software that you would have, and they were supposed to come up with some type of a situation or a scenario, like a student going to college, or a person working in an engineering firm, or a doctor, or something, you know, where what things would you be able to tell them about these devices, whether they should or shouldn't. Okay, almost a midterm. Unit 4. We talked about, whoa, let me see if I can undo that. We talked about digital images. Talked about the extension, like a JPEG, bitmapped. We can use digital images to represent things like audio, smartphones, video cameras, digital cameras. Scanners can capture digital images. We use ones and zeros and a combination of those to represent the images. And how they're represented is represented by the extension. Okay? So then we talked about raster graphics, which are bitmapped, use a bunch of dots to represent them. Then we had vector graphics, were sometimes referred to as illustration. And it uses points, angles, curves, some kind of algorithms to draw the picture. If you resize a bitmap, it might become grainy. If you resize a vector graphic, it retains the quality of the picture. So why would you want to know the difference? Well, this like in Photoshop, is very good for photos, editing and so forth, and managing photos. A lot of business will use this type of software to maybe make a logo. Design it so that logo could be changed in size, it could be made bigger or smaller, and it would retain its quality. How do we share images? Go on Facebook, iCloud, all kinds of cloud services. Go down to Walmart and print them. Okay, there's lots of different ways to share it. Some people do it in some type of social media. Some people do it more privately in the cloud. But nowadays, there's lots of ways to share. Spreadsheets. Manage data, do analysis on data. And then we can take that data, which is numbers, and make a chart out of it so it's easier to see. Key thing, what if analysis, what if situations, and then be able to relate those or easily see the data maybe in a chart. This was Monday. We talked about multimedia again, reviewed. Multimedia could be text, video, pictures, audio, different kinds of pictures. It's some combination of all those things makes multimedia. We can use multimedia on the World Wide Web, hypertext transfer protocol, hypertext markup language. We can have hypertext and hypermedia. We can move based on links. We can move through the software. There are authoring programs or software that helps us develop web pages or websites. Tons of ways to do that. We will in class, we'll use a web server and we'll create it from scratch, HTML. There are services in the cloud that allow you to do that. And so there's many angles to where, maybe you just put a website up on Facebook. In the design, links have to work, graphics have to be clean and load quickly, the layout has to be easy to use or view and ease of use. There's actually two types of things. They call it a user interface. Okay, nowadays Windows is an example, and the Mac has a very nice user interface. Then I believe they use UX, user experience. It's a whole nother ball game in terms of, not just because you have a good user interface, it's also the experience the user has with what they're looking at. Talked about taking the performance survey. We looked a little bit at that during the weeks. And then some more about spreadsheets. You get a label or a number. That numeric can either come from a number or a calculation. When you have a formula, you should strive not to ever use constant values in that formula. What you do is you reference a cell. It's either a relative reference or an absolute reference. Absolute is where we put the dollar signs on. You should be able to round, use these in if, this or this, vertical lookup. You got a table, look up here, and grab a value maybe here. Some simple statistics, max, min, and so forth. Maybe the average. Alright. 2 more pages. Talked a little more about graphics the other day. Pictures, digital images. We can edit them, we can share them, produce prints, and I also talked a little bit about desktop publishing. When you deal a lot with graphics, you have to be concerned about the performance of your computer. Big pictures would use up lots of memory, which can affect your performance. Now in spreadsheets, we're able to make charts. We can take numbers and make them more visible by making a chart. This was a simple example. I don't know if it's fork, if it's, I was going to use the term, if this is like a rumor, but anyway, somewheres I read the military people during World War II were telling Winston Churchill that he can't keep sending planes and pilots into Germany. So what they did is they said, well, here's the start of the war, and they started plotting how many planes they had left at this point. So here's a point about where they were now, and they showed Mr. Churchill that once you get to this date, we will have 0 planes. That's when he stopped sending planes into Germany, and they just protected their own borders. The idea is to see a chart to represent data. We can digitally audio and video. I talked about making sure you did the assignment, the spreadsheet, there was a key there. From the assignment you should do the project, and the project then, all that stuff should be done already. And that's it. So we are pretty close to midterm. Pretty much right there.